All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining in today. I'm Karan, and I manage developer relations for GitHub in India. Sorry for the small glitch on the audio. I hope I'm audible right now and all's well. All right, so let's get started. So this is our second virtual meetup out here in India, and we're going to be talking a lot about open source. We have an amazing speaker lineup today, so stay tuned. Meanwhile, do drop in a hi to everyone over there in the chat, because this would be a great place to connect with everyone else who's like-minded and want to know more and learn more about open source. All right, so a quick intro. How I mentioned, very passionate about DevOps, open source, etc. And like how I mentioned, I manage DevRel here at GitHub India, but I'm not into DevRel, DevOps, and open source. I'm a lot into books, acting, filmmaking, and other things, etc. So you can catch me on Twitter or later over here in the chat as well. So moving on, to give you a brief about what's the agenda for today, we're going to have three speakers share a lot about open source, the journey, and how you can get started. Firstly, we'll have Peeyush Gupta, who is a senior developer advocate at DigitalOcean, talk about contributing to open source through Hacktoberfest. And then we'll have one of our hubber, that is Richa Kumar, who is a senior director of engineering at GitHub, give you some tips around how do you get started contributing to open source. And finally, we'll have Umasankar, who is the co-founder of the OpenEBS project, which is also a CNCF sandbox project, talk about their road to CNCF and how they were growing their contributed community. But before we get started, there are some really exciting things that I want to share with you about what's new at GitHub. You might have come across some of these, or maybe you might have not, but let's go through it once again. So what's new at GitHub? If you have tuned into our Twitter feed or our blogs or other things where we keep talking about how you can really use GitHub to accelerate your workflows and also your software development, you would get to know how much of an importance that we have around security. So recently, code scanning was made available. So GitHub code scanning is a developer first and a GitHub native approach to easily find security vulnerabilities before they reach production. So you can enable it on your public repository, and you can start playing around how you can use CodeQL for your code analysis, making it much more easier to catch bugs early on. So this is something that's new and has been announced terminal and just getting making it easier to code along and interact. So with that, we also had the GitHub CLI generally available. So it has been in beta, and then it's out of beta right now and available for all of you to use. So if you haven't checked it out now, you should really look at it, because this brings GitHub to your terminal to reduce a lot of the context switching and to create even more workflows. So all the things that you've been doing through the GitHub UI, most of it you'll be able to do it using the GitHub CLI as well. Even things like looking at pull requests, reviewing issues, etc. So you can just head over to cli.github.com and give it a shot. It's going to be a super easy, a breezeful experience to just interact with GitHub all within your terminal itself. So for all of you out there who are a lot more into the DevOps world and talking about containers and Docker, etc., GitHub Container Registry is in public beta. So the GitHub Container Registry, or GHCR, allows you to seamlessly host and manage your Docker containers either within your GitHub organization account or even your personal user account on GitHub. So one of the real advantages of GitHub Container Registry is it allows you really fine-grained control and managing the access permissions for all of your containers. So you can even specify that you want certain images to be shared only with certain people or not, etc. So it's right now in public beta. So you can head over to github.com/features/packages to check out the GitHub container registry. So during the beta, storage and bandwidth is free. And right now we support only the Docker image formats. So go and try it out. And lastly, and this is something that's super useful, especially for me as well, which is GitHub Mobile. I know this was announced long ago itself, but it's something that makes your life as a developer or pretty much anyone using GitHub so very easy, because you can do a lot of the tasks through your mobile itself. I personally use it for reviewing a lot of the pull requests or adding comments or issues, etc. And even notifications becomes so easier because you can get these notifications on your mobile itself without having to go to your GitHub UI. So for those of you who haven't seen it or checked it out, go check out GitHub Mobile, which would give you a much more easy, seamless experience of using GitHub. So there's a lot more that has come up or is coming up. And in case you're not aware, there is a public roadmap for GitHub. So just head over to github.com/github/roadmap, and all of the exciting features around various parts of GitHub. We have a roadmap over there. So that's something which you can take a look at if you haven't seen already. Finally, there is one thing which is fresh off the press, literally, and this is specifically for all of us out here in India. And if you haven't seen this, we are really proud and happy to support the Times of India Lost Words Challenge. And this is a tech solutions challenge where a lot of us techies, developers, programmers are invited to create a lot of the solutions that can help India find the lost words due to migration, etc. So there are some real exciting cash prizes to be won, and also some exclusive access to GitHub team, etc. So this is an opportunity for all of us really to contribute to the growth and the development, and make it really easy for e-voting for us as a nation. So go do check it out on toi.lostwordschallenge.com and do participate. And that's about it for right now. So if you have further questions, any comments, you can talk to us on the chat. We are out here to answer any of your questions. So let's move on to the first session for today. And that is Peeyush Gupta. So Peeyush Gupta is a senior developer advocate at DigitalOcean, who is really passionate about DevOps as well. And today he's going to be talking to us about how you can really start your contribution to open source, or even find some of the newer projects to contribute to, and start connecting with others from the community through Hacktoberfest. So let's welcome Peeyush. Over to you, Peeyush.
Right. Thanks, Karan. And thanks for sharing all the good things GitHub has been doing. Loved the CLI. I tried it out and it works flawlessly. Making 50 commits it might be a bit difficult task for a new person who is coming to open source. It might be an easy stuff for open source veterans. But when somebody is just starting with his open source journey, his or her open source journey, it might be a bit difficult for them to make 50 commits. So we moved on to create to measure the impact in terms of opening pull request, right? And Hacktoberfest, in essence, created a platform where, well, people from uh, all sections can come together. People with different backgrounds, people with different skill sets, right? People who have never contributed to open source, they can come together, they can collaborate, they can start working, and they can start contributing to open source, right? And open source is essentially made out of people, right? People are at the core of open source. And Hacktoberfest as a program has been able to provide a platform where uh, these people can collaborate with each other and make the world a better place, so to say. Last year we had around 700 events where a lot of people and lot of contributors came together and start signing pull requests. So it's not just about the numbers behind signups and completions and signing pull requests. It's also about creating that feeling of community, right? And if we talk about pull requests, we had more than 480,000 pull requests last year, and these are all valid pull requests, right? These are the ones that have been either merged or accepted by maintainers, right? And that's the kind of growth we were able to provide to open source in the month of October 2019, and we look forward to do more of that in 2020. Right. So let's talk about Hacktoberfest 2020. This is an October-long celebration of open source software, and where individuals can learn, contribute, meet other developers, and they can contribute 4 pull requests to earn a limited edition T-shirt. Right. Now I know the key part of that sentence sound like earning a T-shirt, but trust me, that's not. The key part of that sentence is learning and contributing to the open source, and also meeting other developers, right? This is what makes Hacktoberfest what it is, right? You get to learn from experts all over the globe. You get to contribute to the projects you like and the projects you actually care about, to the communities you care about, and you also get to meet other developers all across the globe that you can collaborate with, right? uh, One of the change that we had to make this year is, since we are in this situation nowadays, there are no physical events. We partnered with MLH to create a platform for hosting virtual events. We had updated event kits for all virtual event organizers, because community is one of the core part of Oktoberfest, and we wanted to provide a platform for community to come together, to talk to each other, though we can't meet in person, but at least virtually, right? And this year we had the Preptember, uh, where where sorry where repo owners and maintainers, they can get their uh, repos ready for the contribution, because we have seen once the Hacktoberfest starts, there are a lot of contributors out there who are looking to make the contributions to the open source repositories, right? And sometimes those repositories are not in correct shape. They don't have the contribution guidelines, or they don't have the issues tagged properly, right? So we gave that one whole month for maintainers and repository owners to prepare themselves for the event. And one of the thing that I want to call out, we are doing this here, is we have a pick trees, not teas option, right? Uh, we understand that shipping t-shirts all over the globe is pretty, it's not environment friendly exactly, right? This increases our carbon footprint, so we want to offset that. And when you complete the challenge, you get an option where you can plant a tree. And for that, we have partnered with an NGO called Tree Nation, right? And when you choose that option, we make a donation on your behalf to that NGO, and they plant a tree, right? So if you can, please plant a tree and help us make the world a better place to live in, right? And I would like to talk about an important change in rules this year, right? And this has been demanded for a long time, and we have listened to the maintainers and the open source community to make these changes, to make Hacktoberfest better than ever. One of the biggest change that we have is Hacktoberfest is now opt-in, right? Until last year, you could have contributed to any open source repository and your PR would have counted towards the challenge. But this year, and then if your maintainer didn't want their repository to be part of Hacktoberfest, they had to explicitly opt out, right? But we have reversed the process this year. This year, you have to explicitly opt in to the Hacktoberfest program, or a repository has to explicitly opt into a Hacktoberfest program, right? And how you do that is GitHub has support for topics. So for any repository that wants to take part in Hacktoberfest, they can just add the Hacktoberfest topic to the repository, and only PRs that are being sent to that particular repo would be counted towards uh, towards completion of the challenge, right? And it's not just about sending the PRs, right? Earlier we were counting open PRs as well, but this year we have changed it that PR has to be either merged or approved, right? An open PR would not be counted towards completion of the challenge, right? Now, we understand that this basically restrict the number of repos you can contribute to. Last I checked, we had around 30,000 repos opting into the Hacktoberfest program, and it might happen that you are contributing to one of your favorite project, right? One of the project or one of the community that you care about, but they are somehow not participating, or due to any reason they are not participating in Hacktoberfest. Like for those cases, we have an option of adding an Hacktoberfest accepted label, and that works on an individual PRs, right? So if you think your contribution is meaningful, if you think your contribution impacts that particular project in a better way, it helps in make that project better. You can request the maintainer to add the Hacktoberfest accepted label, right? So this gives maintainers a lot of power on making sure that there are only valid and meaningful changes are accepted into their repository, right? We have also increased the review period. Earlier it used to be 7 days, now it has become 14 days, right? And the deadline to do all of this is November 1st, right? So just to give you a summary, or just to give you a run through of the new rules, your PR should be either it should be in Hacktoberfest opt-in repository, and if that's the case, it should either be merged or approved after the review period or during the review period. If you are sending a PR to a non-opt-in repository, it should have an Hacktoberfest label, Hacktoberfest accepted label, right? Otherwise, that PR won't be counted. Right. As Hacktoberfest, we have been growing, year after year via communities and in sponsorships and everything. So for 2020, we have two name partners this year. That's Intel and Dev. Intel is a big name in open source, right? They contribute a lot of code back. Dev is a platform for developers to learn, and we have got a lot of sponsorship partners, Vonage, JetBrains, as well. And we work with GitHub to make sure that all of your contributions are safe and count in a proper way. And we have also got community partnership with MLH, Indeed, ProGate, Mattermost, to name the few. Right. Let's talk a bit about why Hacktoberfest, why we keep doing this, right? And one of the core reason of doing this is we have seen when people come together, when they collaborate with each other, when they work with each other, they create awesome stuff, right? There have been awesome projects that have come out of Hacktoberfest, be it for internal use or be it for external use, right? It provides a learning opportunity for the newcomers or for the beginners in the open source journey. They can learn from experts in the specific projects, right? And maintainers also get a lot of help during Hacktoberfest, right? As I said, Hacktoberfest is all about people, and when you are running an open source project, right, not all the maintainers actually get paid to maintain that project, right? They usually have their day job, and then they are maintaining an open source project due to their love of community, or because it's an hobby project, or it's a personal project, could be any of the reason. And they can always use some help, right? Hacktoberfest provides a platform where new people can come in, they can contribute to the project, and they can actually help those maintainers, right? It helps in growing real world experience where you talk to developers across the globe, right? And learn something new in the process. And Hacktoberfest has proven to introduce people to free and open source software, right? There are a lot of people who have sent their first PRs ever during Hacktoberfest. There are thousands of testimonials where people just started by sending their first PRs ever, and rose till the level of maintainers as well. And the contribution is not just about code, right? you don't have to go ahead and specifically add features to the project. It could be making the documentation better. It could be about writing new test cases. It could be just about, probably writing a blog. Each contribution, as long as it's a PR, gets counted. And we have had testimonials where people just started working or started contributing as part of Hacktoberfest, and then they finally got a job, right? And when you are working with a project, right, probably the company that owns it, or probably a company that actually uses that open source project, would be interested in your skill as well. And it has been proven a good tool for the contribution ladder as well. There are a lot of people who started as a beginner and became active contributors, and there were a lot of active contributors who actually became maintainers. Right? Uh, and this also ties up to one of our DigitalOcean's core values. That's our community is bigger than just us. We have a tech stack based on open source technology, and we understand that for our survival, a sustainable open source growth is one of the key points, right? And we want to give back to the community, and we be it in way of code contribution, be it way of sponsoring open source events or open source foundations, right? Or be it via Hacktoberfest. I want to talk a bit about my Hacktoberfest journey as well. I started 2 years back. I've got 2 t-shirts to prove that. And my first PR was sent on, I'm not sure if you can see the date. That's 1st October 2018, exactly 2 years back. And I was learning Golang at that time, and I was learning cloud native technologies, and I wanted to contribute to a project that uh, that was in those areas, right? And I found out about OpenEBS, right? Uma will talk about that. He's one of the co-founder of the project, and I found the okay, looks like my screen is gone. Uh, right. And then that's how I made my first PR, and it was not a big change. I just added a unit test for a method, and it worked well, right? It helped me talk to the maintainers of the project. It helped me understand how that project works, and I must say that's an awesome community, right? I talked to the maintainers of the project, and they helped me understand what the vision of the product is. And I felt like this is something that I can contribute to over a longer period of time. And then I recently became a maintainer of that project, right? So it took me almost 2.5 years to reach at that level. But I consistently contributed to the project. I became a part of the community discussions, right? I talked to the maintainers and developers of the project, right? And that's what Hacktoberfest empowered me to do. Now, that brings me to talk about Hacktoberfest values. And one of the biggest value is everybody is welcome, right? When you are contributing to an open source project, you will talk to people who are from different sections of life, who have different background, who have different skill sets. You might meet somebody who has never contributed to an open source project, and you also might meet somebody who has been contributing to open source probably 10 years, 20 years, right? So just be kind to everybody, because this is a platform where everybody is welcome, right? And the second one is the most important value. I mean, I cannot stress this enough. uh, it's not about the quantity, it's not about the 4 pull requests that you sent. It's about the quality. How, what meaningful change you are providing, right? uh, and as I said, Hacktoberfest is a platform where maintainers and contributors can meet. Now, whenever you are sending a change, whenever you are creating a PR, just make sure it has a meaningful impact on the project, right? And that way you get to improve your skills, you get to learn more, you get to you know uh, you get to become a better developer. And also from the maintainers points of view, they get a meaningful changes in their project, right? And don't just make it a short-term action. Don't do a shoot and scoot, right? Don't just send P4 PRs and disappear from the project. Whenever you choose a project, make sure this is something that you would want to commit to a longer term, right? When you are contributing to a project, uh, check out their roadmap, understand where it is going, right? See if that aligns with what you want to do with your open source journey. and probably talk to the maintainers, right? Talk to other developers, right? Chat with them on either on Slack or Discord or IRC, whatever communication medium they are using, and then make sure that you stay there for the long term, right? Make the Hacktoberfest your beginning for a longer journey, not just for the month of October, right? Uh, so how do you get started? The first thing first, you need a GitHub account, right? I'm sure, I hope you have a GitHub account. If not, you can just go to github.com. The onboarding is pretty straightforward. You can get a account within minutes. And then you have to register on hacktoberfest.digitalocean.com. Once you register with that, get familiar with basic GitHub operations. What are issues? What are PRs? How do you raise a PR? What are labels? What are topics? Those things. And there are lot of good resources available on the web and on the Hacktoberfest website as well, right? And then you have to search for repos that have the Hacktoberfest topic in that. You can also filter based on the language that you would want to contribute to. You might be a Golang developer, you might be a Python developer, you might be a C++ developer, right? We have got something for everybody. And you have to make 4 pull requests to any of those opted in repositories between 1st and 31st October. Right, and just make sure your PRs meet the matching criteria, right? So whenever you're making a PR to an opted in repository, it should be either accepted or it should be merged, right? And if you are making it to an non opted in repository, the PR should have a Hacktoberfest accepted label, right? And if a PR or repository doesn't follow the Hacktoberfest code of conduct, if you are sending a PR that is not a meaningful change, that is, just you are sending it for the sake of completing the challenge, the maintainers can actually mark that PR as a spam or invalid. And when that happens, and if you have too many of spam PRs, we are implementing a system where you can actually be banned, right? And not just for this year, but for the coming years as well. And that doesn't help anybody, right? So make sure whatever, if you want to complete the challenge, if you want to work on your skills, if you want to make yourself a better developer, make sure you are only sending the meaningful challenges or meaningful PRs, right? I want to give you a run through of what should be the do's and don'ts of the program, right, or of Hacktoberfest. The first thing, you have to send PRs to the opted in repos. We talked about that. Do not send PRs to the random repos out there. Make sure whenever you are sending it, the maintainers and the repo owners have explicitly expressed their desire to take part in Hacktoberfest, right? Read contribution guidelines of the project, right? Every open source project has one where they talk about what steps you have to take to become a good contributor to that project, right? Look for open issues. You might want to change something, or you might want to add a feature, you might want to fix a bug in that project, and there are good chances that there would already be an open issue on that, right? And also there might be a chance that somebody is already working on it. So don't duplicate those efforts. If you feel that there are some issues or there is a new feature that can be used, look through open issues, or you can open an issue, right? And talk to those maintainers, talk to the project maintainers, explain them what exactly you would want to do, right? And once you have had that discussion, when you have understood the requirements of the project, and when they are when the repo owners and maintainers are satisfied with the approach, then you can start working on it and start signing a PR, right? So that's the ideal way, or that's the do's of Hacktoberfest. That's how it is supposed to work, right? But I'm sure you would be aware there are some people who try to game the system as well, and I would like to say that's one of the reasons that we have new set of rules this year, right? And I would just go over a few don'ts as well. Don't send PRs fixing minor text edits, because that doesn't help anybody, right? If you make a grammar change, or if you just add a preposition, or if you just add an adjective, right? It's not going to improve your skills, and also it's not going to help the maintainer as well. It would be probably the maintainer would just be annoyed by that, and if he marks that as a spam, the PR won't be counted as well. So all in all, it's going to be a waste of time, right? So don't do that. Always send meaningful changes, always send impactful changes, right? Most of the GitHub repos already have good first issues, right? That's the label that is usually used for issues that are beginner friendly. Go through them, and these issues would actually help you. These are not complicated issues like, creating a new feature. These are minor issues that you can use. They help you understand the project and how you can actually contribute, right? So if you are looking for an easy way to get into a repository, make sure you go through the good first issue label. And then don't send spam PRs. We take these things very seriously. That's one of the reasons we have changed the rules. If you start spamming any repository, you would be banned from Hacktoberfest, and then uh, it won't be counted anyways, right? Because in the end of the day, the power right now lies in the hand of maintainer, right? And if a maintainer thinks you are spamming, they won't accept those changes, they won't merge those changes, or they won't put the Hacktoberfest accepted label. And in all of these cases, if that happens, your PR would anyways won't be counted, right? So you would take the risk of getting a bad name in the community, and also you wouldn't be able to complete the challenge, right? So it becomes a complete waste. Don't do that. And there, as I said, there might be cases where there are maintainers who don't want to opt in Hacktoberfest, and that's completely okay, right? You might like that project, right? And you might be contributing to that project. And if they are not opting in Hacktoberfest, that's completely all right, right? Since Hacktoberfest is not just about completing the challenge, it's about creating that platform, or it's about creating that community where everybody can come together and collaborate, right? So I don't want to end it on a negative note, on just saying about don'ts. One of the good thing about Hacktoberfest is community, where people all across the globe, more than 170 countries, they come together, they contribute, they meet, right? So focus on that, and just focus on your skills, focus on talking to the project that you like, that you care about, and it would be a good experience for you. Right. So that's all I had. Thank you for being a brilliant audience. And if you like to get in touch, there are some contact details there, be it on LinkedIn, be it on Twitter, be it on email. And if you want to try out DigitalOcean, you can go to the link, that's do.co/Hacktoberfest 100. And you can get $100 credits to try out DigitalOcean and all our services and products. Right? I'm not sure if I have time to answer some questions, but I'm just going to take a couple. I have a question. How can I add my repository so that others can contribute to it? Right. I'm just reading it up from the Twitch chat. How can I add my repository so that others can contribute to it? Right. So you can look for GitHub topics. We have a very nice GIF going on as well on the Hacktoberfest website. You can just add Hacktoberfest topic to your website, and whatever PR you send, that would be counted towards the completion of the challenge. How do you think of dealing with invalid PRs? Right. As I said, when there is an invalid PR, the maintainers can mark that PR as a spam or invalid, either one of those tags. And as soon as that PR has the invalid tag, it won't be counted towards completion of the challenge. Right. I've got just one more question. I have made a PR2 and it accepted, but still shows matured in some time in Hacktoberfest profile. Is there something I missed? Right. Right. So we do have a 14 days of review period for all the PRs, right? No matter if it's accepted or merged or anything, right? So whenever you create a PR, it's going to be reviewed for 14 days, and it gives a chance to maintainers to make sure that that your changes are meaningful and they are helping the project in one way or another. So just wait till 14 days, and if it's accepted, it will just show that that PR is a valid PR, and it would be counted toward completion of the challenge. Right. That's all I had. Thanks, Karan. I hope I didn't take too much time. Yeah.
All right. Um, Thanks a lot, Peeyush, and that was a good intro to Hacktoberfest and also how people can get started contributing to Hacktoberfest. Moving on, we have our next speaker who is going to be talking about how do you get started contributing to open source, what are some of the resources available out there, and also give you some more insight as to how you can start contributing to open source in different ways, and it need not be even just code. So I would like to welcome our very own hubber, Richa Kumar, who is a senior director of software engineering for the GitHub ecosystem here at GitHub, who will be talking about getting started contributing to open source. Welcome, Richa, and over to you.
Thank you, Karan. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here today and really excited to be talking to all of you. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the open source ecosystem and getting started contributing. I think I'll be emphasizing a lot of things that Peeyush also talked about, and maybe getting a little bit more into the details of it. So before we begin, I just want to start with a little introduction. Who am I? So I'm Richa Kumar. I'm the Senior Director of Software Engineering in GitHub. We're really proud to be a hubber. I've been in the software engineering space for about close to 18 years, building products and services that span various domains. Some of them that pop up are identity and directory, stint and mixed reality, and DevOps. And as part of all of these experiences, I've had some great opportunities to interact with the broader developer community. And I've always found that they have enriched the product and the services that I was working on, and it's very powerful to be today in a place. It feels very empowering to be in a place today at GitHub where I am helping in enabling this developer community. So it's really, really deeply satisfying. Outside of work, I'm a running enthusiast. I like to travel, which is on hold right now. Music, have been dabbling a bit with piano, and I'm into books. So let's get started. I want to talk about where we are in today's world. Software obviously powers most of our experiences, from daily activities to solving complex global problems. And the heart of it is the developer community. And today, technology, open source platforms, open source and platforms like GitHub are really enabling a huge and diverse set of developers to sort of come together and collaborate so that they can build the software that the whole world relies on. So open source is what is built by a global team of maintainers, developers, researchers, designers, writers, and so many more people. And just to put that in perspective, we see that on average, each open source project on GitHub welcomed contributors from 41 different countries and regions last year. So it's just a testament to some of the diversity that we see in the developer community and what technology and platforms are able to do to bring these kind of diverse people together. And this diversity is, sorry, I got my slides mixed up. So this diversity is not just about, where people are coming from or their backgrounds, but it's also about the skills that they bring in, the perspectives that they bring in. And so it's, this open source really enables us to share our ideas, to build on top of each other's work, and to build something great together. So let's look at some inspiring numbers. We saw how we were bringing in people from 41 different countries or regions. Some other numbers that are give us perspective into how powerful the developer community can be and how powerful it can be to collaborate with each other. 3.6 million plus repositories today depend on each of the top 50 open source projects. So here's a great example of how people are able to leverage the work that is being done around them. And if you look at 350K plus people who made 5 million plus contributions to the top projects last year. And most importantly, and what we're going to be focusing on today is look at the 1.3 million plus first-time contributors that joined the open source community last year and made their first ever contribution. And so with that, I want to talk about how each one of you can get the most out of open source, how you can explore, how you can be part of shaping the future of software, how you can work with the best in the field, and how you can grow your skills and how you can help others. So let's, so today the rest of this session, we're going to talk a little bit more about, why should you contribute to open source? What can we get from it? What are the different ways in which we can contribute to open source? And then we'll also talk a little bit about, hey, it can be quite intimidating when you're thinking about, your first contribution. What are some guidelines or tips that we can help you with? And what are some resources that you can use that will make this journey fun and a great learning experience and a very enriching experience for you. So let's get into a little bit more detail of that. So why do people contribute to open source? So there are, a few different reasons. Again, Peeyush talked about many of them. To improve software that you rely on. A very natural way of getting into the open source area is that if you're already working on a software that relies on another open source component, if you stumble upon a bug, if the source is available to you, it's easier for you to look at what's happening, perhaps even fix it yourself and contribute it back to the main branch so that everybody can benefit from it. That's a sort of a natural way of getting into a contribution mode. Other benefits that you derive from it is that open source projects provide all types of opportunities, whether it's coding, whether it's UX design, whether it's writing, documentation, testing, DevOps, organizing. And so it's a great chance for you to practice all these skills. Of course, you're going to, open source is all about the community. So you're going to meet people who have similar interests as yourself. And it's a great opportunity to, again, learn from each other. And as so many people say, to form lifelong friendships. So that's another major advantage. So as you share projects and work towards a common goal, you'll find, and as new people contribute, you'll find that there will be a lot of need for explaining things. There will be need for asking questions, for asking for help. So it really makes for great teaching and learning opportunities. Open source is public, so it's a great way for you to build something of a public portfolio of the work that you have done, the contributions that you have made, and to sort of make it like a living resume of your skills and your capabilities. And more today, as organizations are looking to source great talent, these are the places that they look for to see where you have made contributions, and it's a great way for them to get more insights into your strengths and your experiences. In addition to that, along with learning on the technical side, there is a great opportunity for you to build other skills like leadership and management skills. As you work on open source projects, there you will be building teams, you will be organizing efforts around a common goal, you'll be resolving conflicts, or you'll be prioritizing work. So again, it gives you these great opportunities to learn many of these additional skills along with learning on the technical front. So let's get on to what's on your mind when you're thinking about it. Let's say you're new to this and you want to contribute and you're like, okay, where do I start? It's also overwhelming. Or how do I find the right project? Or what if I don't know how to code, or that's not what I enjoy? What if I mess something up? So these are all fairly valid questions. But I think a common misconception is that you can only contribute to open source through code. And you'll be surprised that there are various other ways in which you can make a contribution. So you don't have to contribute only code. So let's talk a little bit more about other ways in which you can make a difference. So there are so many other ways. So let's say that you like to plan events. You can organize workshops. You can or meetups. You can help a project to find relevant conferences, or help the people to participate in those conferences. If you like to write, you can look at contributing in the form of documentation, either writing or translating. Documentation is such a critical part of a project that it can greatly improve how many users can benefit from the project, from using the component, or or encouraging people to contribute to it. If you like organizing, you can link to duplicate. So, we have tools like Issues that help in creating ideas and discussions, or tracking improvements to a project. And that can be overwhelming with so many people contributing. So there's a need for somebody who can help triage and sort through all of those things. If you're the kind of person who's great at that, you could even contribute in that manner. If you like to design, you can conduct user research, you can create a new logo, you can help create style guides for a project, or restructure the layout to make that component improve its user experience. So there are just so many different ways in which you can contribute. If you like helping others, you can be involved more in code reviews, in writing tutorials, or in mentoring other people. And of course, if you like coding, then there's just so many things you can do, from finding an issue that you want to address, to asking to write a new feature, automating project setup, or helping with tools and testing. So this is just giving you a feel for, there's so many different ways in which you can contribute to an open source project. So moving on. So we talked a little bit about why, we talked a little bit about, hey, what are the different forms in which you can contribute beyond just code. So where do you get started? So there are a few different places that can help somebody who's new to this to find ways in which they can get involved. GitHub.com/explore is a place that will identify, based on some of the topics that you're interested in, what might be some interesting projects or repositories that you can start looking at or contributing to. CodeTriage.com also allows you to filter through various repositories that are looking for contributions. Interestingly, you can also sign up for getting issues in your email on a regular basis, and then you can look for what matches your interests. Open Source Friday is a great place that has lots of great tips and guidance for how to get started. I'm going to cover a little bit of that right now and talk through that. So these are some of the places that you can get started. So what are some of the things that will help you, or how do you prepare yourself? So we'll walk through. Open Source Guide is a great place to get started if you're looking to contribute, and it has a good, fairly detailed set of guidelines on how let's look at what a few steps might be as you start to approach your first contribution. So you want to find a project to contribute to. Again, as I mentioned before, sometimes a natural way of getting into this is that you want to fix something in a component you're already using, and that takes you to the source for that project, and then you start looking at it, and you might be at a point where you feel like you might be able to fix it. So that's one way of getting into contributing towards a project. If you are looking at starting in a very different way, where you're just exploring, you can start with something small. No contribution is too small. You can start with anything that you notice, such as a documentation improvement, even something as simple as a broken link in the documentation. 28% of casual contributions are documentation updates, and they really, really help improve the overall project. Projects also often have the beginner-friendly issues. marked in some ways. They might have a /contribute page that lists some of these simpler issues, or they might have a particular tag that you can look for to identify some of the simpler ways that you can get started. Also, as you're looking to select a project, you can look at some of the activity on the project in terms of, are the issues and the pull requests, how active is the project in general, how responsive are the maintainers, how welcoming is the community. These are some of the other things that you can look out for as you're trying to pick. And obviously, you're going to look for something that matches your interests, something that you're passionate about, because that's what's pulling you towards that. So there are some quick tips on, how you might go about finding a project. Once you found a project, or, interchangeably, the two things might go hand in hand, orienting yourself to a new project. How do you get yourself comfortable with a new project? Each open source community may be a little different, but there is some common anatomy, you could say, of an open source project, or some common vocabulary that would be good to familiarize yourself with. What are maintainers? What are contributors? There are certain standard documentation constructs like a license, README, what the contribution model is, what the code of conduct is. So it would be good as a first step to sort of orient yourself before you even jump into a project, to understand some of these common terminologies and concepts. Some of the common tools that are used for organizing discussions and contributions, such as issues, pull requests, discussion forums, mailing lists, or chat channels. So what does that open source community typically use for discussing their ideas? Understand the contribution model. For example, are there specific templates you should use? Are there tests that have to be run? How do you contribute? So these are just some basic things that some which are very generic, and some that would be specific to the project, that would help get you oriented. Communicating effectively is extremely important. The open source community is so successful because we are able to collaborate with each other, and collaboration requires good, effective communication. So some basic tips on, communicating effectively, giving context. Remember, this is written communication. So again, giving context, being direct, keeping communication public. So, so that you can actually derive the entire power of the community instead of, doing direct email or messages. Do your homework, in the sense that, if you want to contribute to a project, do a little bit of, understanding the project yourself, observing and learning before you contribute, and understanding the contribution model, being patient with questions, and of course, respecting community decisions. And above all, written communication can often be challenging when it comes to expressing tone. So, do that extra bit to be respectful, and, to always assume good intentions. We are all in this together. We all want to help out. The communities are usually really welcoming and very approachable. And we want to have that same behavior as we start to become part of that community. Opening issues and pull requests. So again, there's some standard ways in which you would use issues and pull requests in open source projects. There is sort of you could say, best practices around when do you open an issue, how do you inform when you have started working on an issue, or if you or you can help resolve an issue even if you're not already working on it, because that it has been fixed in a different way, and so on. So familiarize yourself with what the life cycle of issues looks like. What's the best way to use issues to again be productive in managing the project and in tracking the project. Opening a pull request, again, there are some standard things you would do, and again, each project may have its own very specific instructions on the contribution model, but typically you would fork the repository, clone it locally, create and connect it to the remote branch, create a branch for your edits, And then, an example of what one project may mandate is that, you include screenshots of before and after your changes, if it's a change that affects UX, that you test your changes with a certain set of existing tests, or that you also create the necessary tests that go hand in hand with your own changes. And wherever possible, contribute in the style of the project to the best of your abilities. So, as you work on different open source projects, you may find that design or coding guidelines tend to be a little bit different in all of these. So trying to maintain consistency and contributing in that style of the project as much as possible is also what we would recommend. And of course, at the end of all of that, you will be able to submit your first contribution. Post that, you may find that you may get feedback, you may get rejected, you may get accepted. It's important for us to understand, again, respect the decision of the community, learn from what they're telling us, and in no time, you're going to be very successful in making that first contribution. So with that, I want to, again, sort of invite every one of you to join the community. To begin with, follow some of the open source projects. There's nothing better than learning by observing and seeing how many of the open source developers run open source projects. Just follow that, learn a little bit more about how people collaborate, and that'll give you a little bit more confidence in sort of taking that first step yourself. Build on great ideas. So one of the biggest advantages of open source is that you have this problem that you want to solve, or you have this great idea that you want to implement, and you may find that somebody has also had a similar idea, or they've solved part of the problem, or something almost similar to what you're trying to do, and you don't have to start from scratch. You can make a clone of that repository, experiment in your private repository, build on top of that, and maybe get your idea implemented in no time. And when it's appropriate, contribute back to the community. So, and then ultimately, you contribute your skills and you learn a lot along the way. So I hope that this has helped, again, re-emphasize, why it's so valuable to be a part of this great developer community, this great open source community, and some of the different ways in which you can do it, and also some early tips and places for you to get started. Thank you again to everyone for being here today, and I'll be happy to, if we have the time, Karan, let me know. I have not been following the chat for the questions, but if you want to bubble up anything, I can do that, or whatever you say.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Richa. I'm sure, that's something that's really helpful, because anyone, when they're getting started, they want to know how and where you can get started. Where can I find resources? Who can help me, etc. So I want to let you know all one thing, that right after our session here, we'll also have a breakout where all of us can come together and also interact with all of the speakers over here. So stay tuned. Towards the end of the session, we'll let you know how you can get into the breakout as well. So we in the first two sessions, the speaker spoke about Hacktoberfest and, also how to get started with open source, etc. And our next speaker is actually going to talk about the success story of their own project and how they've been able to grow their contributor community and go on to become a CNCF sandbox project as well. So I would like to welcome Umasankar Mukkara, who is a co-founder of the OpenEBS project, and he'll be talking to us about their road to CNCF and also how they've been able to grow their contributor community and a few of the other things as well. So welcome, Uma, and then over to you.
Thank you, Karan. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Again, thank you, Karan, and thanks to GitHub for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to speak here on the GitHub meetup for Hacktoberfest. So to speak a little bit about myself, I go by Umasankar Mukkara. I'm a co-founder and chief operating officer of Maya Data. We are an open source tech company that specializes in technologies on Kubernetes. As you must be knowing, one of the main ways to build open source tech in the cloud native space is actually to develop this tech through CNCF. So I have created two open source projects from scratch and build the communities around these two projects, and we have taken them into the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, and that's exactly what I'm going to talk how we started, what were the milestones that we achieved, and a little bit more about the project itself. So about Maya Data, we are the 5th largest contributors in terms of PR authoring to CNCF. And as you can see, the other 4 are very big companies. Being a small company, having achieved this feat really shows our commitment to open source. And OpenEBS itself is one of the most used cloud native storage or container attached storage projects. We have a lot of expertise on Kubernetes, how to manage stateful applications on Kubernetes, and much of our team are actually CKS, and we are, last time this was written, it was 19, maybe now it's around 25. So we take pride in being part of the open source journey, and that's part of our core business as well. So a little bit of how this project is doing. We founded OpenEBS, as you must have heard from Peeyush, the first speaker here. He was one of the early contributors through Hacktoberfest to OpenEBS. We really founded in October. We just missed that Hacktoberfest. We really started in 2017 for OpenEBS, but we've been one of the many projects which have actually built communities using Hacktoberfest, right? So we definitely made use of it, and that's thank you again for DigitalOcean and GitHub and the community around it to have this program there. So today we have a lot of contributors, 90 plus to be precise. We started with our own team, and first contributors came in through the Hacktoberfest a little bit before that, but a bunch of them came in the first Hacktoberfest, and we actually now celebrate, not just participate, by actually running meetups every weekend, and also by dedicating some time for helping the new contributors succeed, right? So in terms of reviewing the PRs or helping them raise quality PRs. So that's actually, we are proud of doing that. So the other second project is also in Cloud Native Computing Foundation, CNCF. We started around 19 months later, in time around for the 2018 Hacktoberfest. Again, there were many contributions that came in, and it's also growing very much. As you can see that there are about 30 to 40 new users that are coming and using this project, and there are about 50 plus contributors overall to this, barring the small one line, 2 line PRs. If you take them out, you still have about 50 plus, right? So that's a good statistic to show that we've been able to build good communities thanks to GitHub itself. It's a platform for open source building. And thanks to CNCF, the community around it, there's a lot of churn going on right now in the cloud native space around Kubernetes or around other applications on Kubernetes. So how this talk was really not about, details of how to contribute to Hacktoberfest or how to participate. That was covered by Peeyush, and why GitHub and how things work. That was discussed by the next speaker. Now, actually, as Karan said, it's more of a success story, and how we actually went through the journey from writing the first line of code in 2016, November, December, to actually, one of the leading projects in the world with respect to container attached storage on Kubernetes, right? So we founded on GitHub this project, and as you can see, we have participated in 3 Hacktoberfest, and then fourth one, there is I'll be talking about how to contribute to OpenEBS PRs and Litmus PRs after a few slides. But it took us about a couple of years to build a community. The initial communities were around community building is around writing good documentation and making sure that we help the early developers to come in and help them run OpenEBS, use OpenEBS, and contribute through small PRs and encourage them to go for a more challenging PRs. So it takes work from project maintainers to work with these developers and then move them, and then they become part of the contributing community, and then it's a cycle, and that adds up to itself, right? And so we did achieve the status of CNCF sandbox around 2019 May, and we're about to move to the next stage. Incubation is in progress, and we followed a very similar experience. I was a newbie in 2016 for open source, but by the time I created or co-created the second project in cloud native space, Litmus, I felt like I already know how to do things. So it took us less time to achieve the milestone of getting into sandbox and build a community faster. And of course, the CNCF ecosystem itself has grown by a lot, and GitHub is much more popular right now. So, and as we can see, we have participated through the 2 Hacktoberfest, and we are now big time celebrating both the projects on this Hacktoberfest, and happy to say that we already received a lot of enthusiasm towards both the projects. And in fact, we are finding it difficult, mentoring them, coaching them. On the first few days, you will see a lot of doc and small PRs, and those are great, right? And then we will try to get them to submit in a proper way that the project guidelines expect, and then encourage them to move on to the next PRs. We do have the whole month, and of course, it's not the end of it. The idea of Hacktoberfest and open source is to get started and then continue, and then you will be able to do a lot of things, and why you have to do. The previous sessions talked about it, and of course you are really contributing to 2 of the most popular projects, most happening projects on Kubernetes or cloud native space today. So with that, let me talk a little bit about the 2 projects, as well as how to contribute to these 2 projects. So first, about OpenEBS. It's based on Conway's law, which says that the architecture that is built by teams is really similar to how they operate, right? If they operate in silos, you will end up having the application architecture in silos. But that's not what we want today, right? So what we want is you want a microservice applications that can run independently by a few team members that is cutting across different specialities, right? So that's really what makes your application more portable and other stuff. So this is what we apply to OpenEBS. And storage is a complex topic, and storage is always the last area in which you store your data, and it has to be more critical. At the same time, you should not get into the trick of it keeping the storage as monolithic or getting funneled into storage, and that becoming a bottleneck for your flexibility or moving your application across Kubernetes clusters in various cloud providers or data centers. So the whole idea is keep the data loosely coupled and let it be operated by loosely coupled teams, and that will be suitable for loosely coupled applications, which is nothing but our new mantra for Kubernetes, right? So OpenEBS philosophy is build storage within containers and make it small in such a way that it is just serving the data for a given microservice, right? So it's like building your enterprise storage features for a given volume. Don't build an array like in the olden days, right? So an array would be serving hundreds of applications, but here an array in OpenEBS array will be serving one application, and you don't need to tune your big array for hundreds of applications, making it so complex. Now you can just, you have the entire array for yourself, and it runs within Kubernetes. You don't need to know any specifics of your array. If you know how to manage Kubernetes, you know how to manage your storage, right? So that's the idea of container attached storage, right? So make it completely containerized, make it specific, tunable for a given application, and let it move along with the application, or let the controlling and scheduling of the storage be taken completely care by Kubernetes itself, right? So the advantages of that is you're not really logged into any cloud or a specific technology, and it is completely open source, and you don't need to know a lot of storage level knowledge or a specific array knowledge typically, which is required to manage storage in a legacy world, right? And this is the right architecture for high-speed disk that's coming out, right? So sometimes your disk is faster, and what's the bottleneck is the kernel, right? So you need to probably, you have so much of CPU, such a fast hard disk, and you don't have the software to run it in a way that you want, and probably that's one of our architectural goals to solve, and OpenEBS Maestro really solves for it. So how to get started with contributions? We have a well-nurtured contributing guide, and there are a lot of mentors available on Slack. We're on Kubernetes Slack, and if you go to Kubernetes Slack, which many of you are already there, search for OpenEBS, you will find two channels, one for OpenEBS Dev and another for OpenEBS. OpenEBS channel is really for asking questions or helping people who are trying to use OpenEBS. OpenEBS Dev is what is mostly interesting for you if you're trying to contribute. And the project is actually pretty big, so you will see a lot of areas, right from very basic docs to supporting multi-org, and if you're an expert in this area, storage areas, Docker, NVMe, data protection, and then there is a lot of, our website itself is open, and there are other JavaScript based development that we are doing as well. So if you're a Go and if you're Rust, our primary engine, Maestro, is written in Rust, which is one of the most happening languages right now for developers. So if you know Rust, or if you want to prove that you can write a cool code in Rust, or you want to get started on Rust, go to OpenEBS Maestro, and then you will see a bunch of opportunities to help yourself and the project, right? So as discussed by Peeyush, follow the Hacktoberfest guidelines. So we have tagged the issues with Hacktoberfest label, and you claim it, and you go raise a PR, work with the maintainers, and resolve the comments, and will be very forthcoming to help you succeed in these PRs, right? It's a win-win for us as well as for you. And then, of course, it depends on what kind of PR you took, easy one or difficult one. The difficult one may take almost like a couple of weeks to do a feature, but we really want contributors to go deeper and deeper as much as possible in the entire month and after that as well. So that's about OpenEBS. And the second project is a chaos engineering infrastructure or toolset project. And let me talk a little bit about why chaos engineering, right? So, Kubernetes is happening now, and a lot of code is being churned from development into operations pretty fast, right? That includes the Kubernetes itself, right? So a core infrastructure like Kubernetes is coming out every quarter, whereas something like Linux comes out every 18 months, right? So that's how fast Kubernetes comes in thanks to the great community and support from a host of vendors, as well as to the developers themselves, right? So it's happening. And then you'll see a lot of other services on Kubernetes databases that are developing pretty fast. So if you are developing a Kubernetes application or maintaining it, you really depend a lot on the resilience of your app depends on a lot on the underlying stack. So typically, most of the resilience of your app depends on how stable or how resilient the other services are implemented on Kubernetes, right? So in order to make sure that your service level objectives are maintained, you need to maintain a philosophy of chaos engineering, and that's where Litmus comes in. You can use Litmus to actually build a complex chaos workflows which are predefined and pre-tested. You can just deploy them, automate them, and you can start measuring the resiliency and then taking step-by-step improvements from there onwards. So it applies to the entire stack of applications on Kubernetes and Kubernetes itself, the platform. And the beauty of Litmus is it is completely cloud native. It has got an open way SDK to write new experiments, and there's a good community around it. And then you have a chaos operator or APIs that will help you run these things in a very cloud native way. And there's a hub, just like Helm Hub. We got a chaos hub where you will find a lot of predefined experiments which can be used to get started and then build more complex workflows. So Chaos Portal is a monitoring and workflow management solutions around Chaos Hub. And this is very much under development. If you are a web developer, you will find great challenges and opportunities to contribute to Hacktoberfest through Litmus Portal. So how to contribute to Litmus? We made it easy again. The areas are, if you're a web developer or any cloud native application developer or stack developer, you will find an opportunity to develop a chaos experiment around that. And we have actually integrated with another developer cloud platform called Octato. And for Hacktoberfest, we made it pretty easy to develop the entire experience. If you want to set up Litmus on Octato and you want to actually start running your development environment, it takes as much as, I'm just deploying right now Litmus live on Octato. It's a namespace that I'm deploying Litmus on, and I'm ready to go, right? So it's a pretty simple app, Litmus. Of course, you can do a lot of complex workflows, but all you needed to develop Litmus and contribute and test your PRs is right there set up on Octa2. It's a free platform, I guess, so you can go and get started within a few minutes. So not only that, DigitalOcean and other good swag you get, and my data also gives a big prize, maybe a couple at the end of Hacktoberfest. Last time we gave away one laptop, now maybe more. And this time you can actually get more details on my data blog. There's a good blog that our team has written on how to participate. Much of it I covered right now, but more details are there here. And then some success stories around. You can see we are very proud of how we did last meetups. And again, thanks for whoever has started this Hacktoberfest and the great community around it. So with that, probably I'll take some questions if there are some. Back to you, Karan.
Thanks a lot, Uma. There are a few questions, but since we are towards almost the end of the session, we can probably take up most of the questions together in our breakout. So thanks everyone for joining in. So today's virtual meetup saw Peeyush Gupta from DigitalOcean talk about how to contribute to Hacktoberfest, to open source through Hacktoberfest. And we saw Richa talk about how to get started contributing to open source. And Umasankar Mukkara talk about their journey towards growing their contributor community and a little bit about their projects and how they went on to becoming a CNCF sandbox project and also starting a new project as well. So now let's jump into our breakout session. You will see a link to join this towards the end now in a while, and you can hop in using that link, and we can take some conversation further on over there as well. So thank you everyone once again for joining in. We'll be having these virtual meetups frequently every month, and we'll be announcing our next month's meetup, that is for November, very soon as well. So stay tuned to our meetup.com group as well as our Twitter channel to be updated on all the new events that we'll be having for you, and also the programs and connecting you with a lot of the other open source leaders out here in India. So thanks everyone, and see you on the breakout side of the meetup for today.